Alrighty, then ready to call this meeting to order. With a roll call vote, please. Brian Bichkowski.
Here.
David Lutz.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Rob Garrity.
Here.
Mike Gee is out. Kara Moore.
Here.
Joyce Terrio.
Here.
And Susan Klein is here. And we have Anita Mecklenburg from the Select Board via Zoom. And Conservation, is that right? Yes.
I'm sorry,
She might not be able to hear me.
what did you mean?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. Caitlin over, representing the Conservation Commission.
Thank you. Welcome.
I apologize. You said we have a new member from the conservation?
No,
Oh.
just she's coming to present to us tonight. So
Oh,
it was just,
all right.
I was just letting you know that who was on the call. Or in the meeting. All right, so since we had originally said conservation would go first, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and do conservation first, since that's what she was planning. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well.
Okay, and so we have article, sorry, let me just skim through this real quick. Mhm. Okay, really far down. Okay, it's literally the end. Thank you. All right, Article 14, you have the floor. Thank you.
So Article 14 has to do with notification requirements under the bylaw. The commission is proposing to add certificate of mailing as an appropriate notification method. There's two sections in the bylaw that refer to notification, one under notice and hearings and one under coordination with other boards. For those of you who aren't familiar with certificate of mailings, they're pretty similar to certified mail. The two main differences being that there's no record of delivery and the mailing itself does not, there's no proof of mailing. The official record just shows the date that the mail was sent out. So the Wetlands Protection Act in their 2014 revisions made the addition of certificate of mailing as an appropriate method. Since then, in the past 8 years, many towns have also adopted this method. And so the commission is looking to also adopt that at the town meeting.
Okay, so the only thing that's changing is instead of it originally prior to this, it was certified mail or hand delivery, you're adding just basically regular mail. Then you get a receipt, but there's no notice of delivery, meaning the abutters, you won't know if they actually received it, correct?
That is correct. There is a form that if the article does go through and the town ultimately votes to approve this, we would change our filing guidelines to include the form, which would then provide proof of delivery. As we would also revise the filing guidelines to include an affidavit of service from the applicant or their representative, which states that, you know, they indeed sent out the mail on this specific date. And I have examples of those if any of you would like to see them.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So what's the problem we're trying to solve? Is it cost or nobody's home to sign for certified mail or what?
So that actually highlights the two main issues, one being cost. So currently the cost of one certified mail is $7.85. For a certificate of mailing, it's $1.55. It's actually slightly cheaper if you do it as a group, which a lot of applicants would, since they are, would be notifying multiple butters. I think it's more like $1.35 when you do it as a group. Another issue is that a lot of times people aren't home to receive the certified mail. And then at that point, it gets held at the post office, and people can't always get down there in time. I believe the post office will attempt a second delivery, but after that point, they just return to the sender.
Okay.
Susan?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, though, the person filling the application is responsible for these costs, correct? Not the town?
That is correct.
So ultimately, as the town, we're not shouldering the cost burden, right? I think our responsibility is to try and provide I guess I would phrase it like this, like, I don't think it's our responsibility to lessen the burden on the people filling out the applications in terms of ensuring delivery of these types of things. I can appreciate that people might not be home for certified mail. They might have to go to the post office, those sorts of things. But I think of these three options, hand delivery, certified mail with return to receipt, and certificate of mailing is probably going to be the least likely to ensure that it gets delivered. So maybe people will disagree with that. I mean, I think that the mail is going through lots of staffing problems for certain, and mail delivery is certainly irregular as it is. So without tracking, I think, again, this is probably the least likely of the three to get there. So if we're not shouldering the cost, right, and we want to, I think, ultimately ensure that all the abutters are properly notified of this, like what is the upside to the town if the application, the person filing the application is responsible for the cost. It's not saving the town any money. But we seem to be accepting the risk of a lower likelihood of proof of delivery.
Yes, that's definitely a good point. Certainly the town, the Conservation Commission, the DPW does file projects with the Conservation Commission at different times. So cost would, play a role for those applications. But you are correct. The majority of projects that we receive are from private parties.
What percentage of I'm sorry, David.
Go ahead.
Okay. What percentage of towns do certified mailings instead of just certified mail? Sorry. Like, what percentage of towns are we talking about? Do all towns do this except for us? Do the majority of towns do this except for us? Or we do,
So I don't have
I'm trying to figure out if we're going to be, if we're behind the 8 ball, so to speak, or if we're, are we trying to get ahead of a curve, or what are we doing here?
So I don't have the exact numbers on that. But from my past experiences, I would say the majority of towns have adopted this over the last 8 years. There certainly are towns who have chosen to keep the course and just stick with the certified mail or hand delivery. But I would say that the majority of towns in the state do allow for certificate of mailings.
Susan, if I may, Jonathan, I wanted to just address some of your concerns, is that these are often based on notifying people of public hearings. And if they schedule a public hearing and you do the mailing and someone doesn't sign for it, you have to cancel that public hearing, or it's challengeable. The public hearing is challengeable, and that turns out to be a cost to both the town and to the applicant, because they don't have the opportunity. They can't necessarily move forward because there is an abutter who could challenge the fact that they weren't properly notified. the
Couldn't they do the
public
same thing?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
happens if someone with the certificate of mailing claims never to have received the
hearing. The
notification?
certificate of mailing, when it went out to the address, it went out to the
Yeah,
address.
it's a,
So if it goes out to the address, you've done your due diligence to get the mail to the people who are abutters. If you only can get to do the, and this happens when they schedule a public hearing, you have to notify the abutter. The applicant has to notify the abutters that there's a public hearing, not the town, the applicant. The town also advertises it, obviously, but at that point, it becomes incumbent upon the applicant to like make sure that and it becomes a problem. I mean, the state made a change almost 10 years ago, 8 years. What do you say, 2014, when they changed the
Yes, it was 2000, fall 2014.
it's an issue with public hearings that especially for controversial projects, people will dodge that stuff.
How often
Give
does that
themselves a
happen?
challengeable.
That meetings have to be canceled? Because someone didn't see the mailing?
So if there hasn't been, when someone picks up certified mail, the sender will receive the green card back. If all those haven't been received prior to the meeting, the hearing for that project can't open, and then would have to be moved to the next meeting. As far as how often that happens, it hasn't happened since I've been here in town, which is only since April, so not very long. Off the top of my head, I can, definitely think of several projects that have had to continue to the next meeting because they didn't have, the necessary green cards.
Okay,
The green card thing is the
Yeah.
hang up. Is
Okay.
that if they don't show you a stack of green cards that matches the list, you have to cancel the hearing.
Okay.
And that can be a problem. I mean, because they schedule the hearings with 2 to 3 weeks notice. You have to get the thing out, you have to get the responses.
does that mean if I hated a project?
Yeah,
I was
you could
invited
dodge it.
to, I could just. dodge it?
Absolutely.
That's absurd.
Plus, this post office, if you're a normal human being, and you have a lunch hour, you're screwed. You can't go to the post office because they close during lunch.
that's true.
Just to give some more information to the
Mhm.
advisory committee, some of the communities that have been a part, it is pretty onerous. And where town has more projects that they actually deal with the Conservation Commission, they've sort of adopted this as well, certificate of mailing. Just FYI.
I was on the conservation conservation commission for years, as was my cohort here. And it did come up on more than one occasion.
Okay.
We had to cancel push hearings.
I can't remember that ever happening at the ZBA.
Because
we not have
the
notification
Conservation
requirements?
Commission, the Wetlands Protection Act has special notification laws,
Okay.
thanks to a state representative that that we can talk about later.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. All right, did we, I just noticed this. Did we know about Article 15 from the Energy Committee? No?
I thought there was a note at the bottom of something saying they were gonna talk.
Oh, yeah, there was that spreadsheet we got had a note,
Okay.
3 lines below that didn't have any. Remember that?
Mhm.
This is the bane of my existence, funding energy studies. I don't like those.
Always pay for themselves, Madam Chair.
Except that there's 1,000 companies who do them for free, so paying for it makes no sense. All right.
Kind of energy audits that a commercial entity like the town would get.
Oh, yes, they do. There's companies that will come in and do that for you for free.
Agreement with them.
No, they want you to, but you don't have to legally. And then, it's just up to you if you want them to hire them to do the work. But just like with any type of building, there's people who come out and give you an estimate. I hate funding this stuff, but that's just me. All right. moving on. Article 1, see if the town, some money, unpaid bills. I know you said you weren't necessarily prepared for everything, but so just tell me if I get to something and then you're not ready for it. Do we have any unpaid bills?
I believe you not having unpaid bills.
None that we know of as of today. Okay. Article 1 is a no stand. Okay, so we take no action on Article 1. Article 2 is transfer funds, general budgets. Do we have any transfers?
Yes.
Okay,
And I can give you a broad overview of that. I think we should have our finance director, Todd, be here for our next meeting to go into the general information, but we do have some transfers.
okay.
We would do, I believe in the town here is typical to do $100,000 into OPEB,
Mhm.
$150,000 into the stabilization fund, $120,000 approximately for the payment for the ban on the salt shed, fire pump, and DPW snow truck. We'll have $75,000 for increased fuel costs. And the town has typically done this all together, but there is another article that's sort of different. The clerical contract, it should be its own contract, but it's going to be $70,000 as well for the clerical contract. We're approving that.
Okay,
So those are the transfers that will be on.
since you are a new town administrator, we have not had a chance to speak about this. What are your feelings on putting $100,000 every year into open?
Okay,
I vote no on this every year, and I'm always outvoted, but I always say no because I think it's a.
so I'll say this, there's two arguments towards OPEB. Some people will say, hey, this is a liability. Who knows if the state assists with this problem? Why are we putting money into it and towards it? If you're asking my personal opinion about it, I've always had the philosophy that we do invest in OPEB. Particularly, I've been involved with sort of our rating agency presentations, and they are prioritizing. They're looking at communities and whether they're investing in OPEB. You will get dinged for it. If you've looked at a scorecard from the rating agency, if you are not investing in OPEB, they will.
Can you remind just for we all know, but for the people out there, what OPEB is for me, please?
Yes, it's other person employment benefits, so sort of the liability for health insurance and so forth for retirees. So my philosophy is that it's beneficial, particularly when we're looking at going before rating agencies, given our presentation, we should be investing in it. Probably when our retirement, when we get fully funded, we probably should roll the payments that we have towards OPEB, and that will be beneficial for the town's rating agent, town's debt rating.
Just again, because you're new and
Yep.
everybody out there and in here already knows my stance on this. Right now, we are contributing 50%, which is the state lowered it to 35, and I advocate for it to be lowered to 35 going forward, not to affect anyone currently employed or anyone who is already retired, but any new hires should be hired in at 35, which is what the state allows. I don't understand why we spend an extra 15% every year, which equates to almost $150,000 a year when we don't have to. So again, I will just put that back out there. I don't know how anyone else feels about it, but I say it every year. And every year it stays the same. So that's a lot. I mean, in theory, if you lowered it to 35, we could be putting if you wanted to just not change a thing, we could now be putting $250,000 into our debt against it. And not even affecting our budget at all. Right?
You're right,
Because-
there's different ways to approach it. Some people put a small percentage towards it. It's really the town's decision in which way to go there. But
Yep.
there's different ways to do it.
Well, technically, I think it's the town administrator's decision.
There's different ways.
Administrator's decision on.
We vote on it in the town meeting.
We do, but it has to be put into the budget, so. I will burn your ear about that some other time, but Article 3 is transfers for collective bargaining agreements between the town and various, this is unions, the
Yes.
clerical one. Okay, gotcha, thank you. Is this going to, sorry, it might be off topic, I'm not sure. Have we settled the library issue with the union contracts with the library yet? Are those all been, huh?
Not aware of it.
It means we did.
Okay,
I would,
I spoke- no, I spoke
I'm
to-
stating that as an opinion, not a fact, so.
okay, I don't know, was it last year, the year before?
Yeah,
They basically, the library filed a grievance, I guess, is how I hate to talk on camera because if I'm not remembering it right, I know there's an issue, I don't remember exact who filed what. But basically, the library employees were being underpaid, so we still owe, and they settled it, so we owe various library employees back pay.
For I wouldn't know.
So I don't
And if
know,
we had that, I had a list of some outstanding items. I knew for like the clerical contract
Yeah.
issue, I know firefighters. But I spoke with the library director. She didn't mention anything like that. I didn't have that
she's new, right? She's only been here a couple weeks.
She's
couple
been
months.
for a while.
for a while, but it's interim.
No, she's been at the library, but I'm saying she just became the director,
Yeah,
correct?
that's
Like
right.
in the spring, maybe?
Yes,
Sarah, right? Is that who we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I believe, I don't know if they were in this fiscal year budget or if we still need to.
that's the
put
thing. I
those
think it
in.
might have been put in the budget because they knew where it was going to be.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
remember the.
Understanding the process, I imagine that was an issue in the previous fiscal year.
Mhm.
And because it was addressed in that fiscal year, the way it was probably within the budget and they addressed it that way.
It-
They
it-
definitely, I know there's people who haven't been paid yet,
No one's been paid out on that.
and the fiscal year ended on July 1st, right? Or
June 30th.
June 30th, so if they're still owed money, it's gonna have to be a transfer, right?
Put it in reserve.
It could be reserves,
You could
okay,
put it in reserve.
okay.
That
I
carries.
just want to make sure if we're needing to add that as a transfer.
We have the
Yeah.
flexibility there. So God, thank you.
Okay, so library, just because this was talking about clerical unions, so it made me think of it. Okay. Article 4, capital items through debt funding. Do we have any capital items through debt funding this year?
At the moment.
Okay. So that'll be IP'd. Okay. Article 5, some capital for other capital.
So we definitely have other capital. Todd and I are meeting with departments as we speak. We don't have a list yet, so that's definitely something. we'll-
Okay. Do you have any idea yet of any big items that are going to be there? Like like how we talked about it's a fire truck or a salt shed or something huge that
So
it's
we're-
gonna cause town people to be in an uproar. We just like to be prepared if we know it's coming.
So there's different avenues to address some issues. For example, the chief has made an engine a priority for himself.
Mhm.
But we could do it in a combination of ways. We could do a piece ambulance receipts, we could do a piece ARPA, a piece capital. But that is a pretty large expenditure. That's about $875,000.
Okay.
So that's definitely that's definitely an item of consideration because we're putting a lot of money into the existing engine when it's not really worth that value. So it's probably something the town would want to address.
Mhm. Yeah, I think he mentioned it in his budget last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So, Justin, I'm new to the board.
Sure.
But have some Norfolk history. Do we have a CIP?
So last year, the town created its first sort of 5-year capital improvement plan. The town partnered with ClearGov and did a 5-year plan. I intend on continuing that. So we do have a CIP.
It's
We can
actually,
give you a copy. There's one online.
Okay.
The previous year.
Okay.
actually a couple years old, I think, but,
Mhm.
or it was started a couple years ago. Maybe it was pulled together a
It
year
was
ago.
pulled together
Yeah.
last year.
Sorry,
And it's a 5-year. plan.
Just so you know, anything generally speaking, in my experience, anything over 75,000 will get lots of questions at town meeting. And especially fire station things, police station things, and DPW things. They'll ask lots of questions. How we can buy an engine cheaper will be the first one, just so you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll give you general heads up of some items that are on there.
Okay.
Like I said, we haven't made a decision, so I don't know if we'll incorporate or not, but going off that that figure, Matt Hafner's presented, there's a need to replace the boiler and the circulation pumps in town hall. That's a pretty expensive project. That's about $375,000. There's been issues with that and it's required the town hall to be closed and so forth. So, yeah, that's something that
What do you think?
full.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something that would be.
Yeah, let's not put these in the consent calendar. That's not gonna work. Okay,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
anything else?
In terms of over 75, I don't really see anything else there. Obviously, the police cruisers,
Mhm.
there's probably need for that, would get on schedule for that. So if you do 2 police cruisers a year, that's gonna be $140,000 approximately. You've got ADA sort of improvements, whether it's the building, the town did an ADA study last year, so we're gonna have to make some investments there. You got sidewalk improvements, so that's something to consider. And then roadway. I believe the town did 200,000 last year. Not committing to anything like that yet, but $200,000 is a pretty large expenditure as well.
Okay. All right,
Susan,
yes.
can I ask you a question
Of
about
course. Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
The town hall boiler, et cetera. There's been discussions, and I think the energy article was commenting on referenced heat pumps, including ground source heat pumps.
Yes.
I hope we make a decision on where we're gonna go before we think about replacing the boiler. Do you know what I mean?
Like, have the audit before you do the boiler.
Yeah,
I mean, if it makes sense to do ground source heat pump.
is that hydro air? Heat pump?
No, it's ground, it's a technology that's different from air source, but it uses groundwater rather than the air to
Well, hydro air, right? Because it's water.
hydro air,
Yeah, like.
hydro, just straight up. I mean,
It's just a hydro air system, meaning that your heat runs off of water,
yeah.
heated water
you-
instead of
you
a boiler. Yeah, you still need a boiler.
Heat and cool, you heat and cool the
Don't you still
system.
have to have a boiler for it, even though it's water?
Yeah, it's a different kind of boiler.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not just firing up the boiler with.
Right.
The other thing is, as a comment, I was the energy manager for the town for a year, 9 years ago or something like that.
Mhm.
Just
Tell your age, David. Tell your age.
8 years ago, so I'm not much younger than I look. But there was also discussion at the time, and I don't recommend this, of bringing natural gas from the corner of Main Street and Rockwood up to Liberty Lane and bringing it up that way, or whatever that road is, to the town hall. I'm not recommending that, but it's one of the things that needs to be considered before we just replace it with an oil boiler, which is what we have now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Matt and I talked about that, and I, you know,
Matt is very aggressive about looking for new ways to get stuff done,
Right.
so I'm hoping he presents all the options.
I have a question. So when you want Verizon on your street, Verizon pays for it. Verizon comes in, they lay the cables, they bring Verizon services to your street. Do we not have that ability with gas? You have to pay for it
They
yourself?
bring it to the edge of your property and then you have to bring it into your property.
Well, yeah, but they haven't even brought it to the edge of the property, right?
So they're not gonna, they have,
They won't do it unless there's customers announced.
so in other words, you'd have to sign up everyone between the corner of Main Street and Rockwood to wherever they needed to bring it by, which would be on, it's not Liberty Lane, it's the one that runs between Liberty Lane and Main Street. They have to bring it to there, so you're talking, I'm not saying it's not doable, but they won't run it into your building, they bring it to the point of the road.
But to the
where-
point, they won't even bring it up the street unless they think there's a good customer base, like they could.
Well, I mean, if they can get the library and the town hall on there, they're probably pretty happy, but I also don't think they're overly keen on extending gas infrastructure at this point, given a lot of other stuff going on. So I'm just being inquisitive.
Mhm.
I had a conversation with Matt about it, actually, he was looking at gas, you know, obviously. We're looking at getting a little bit cleaner, it seemed cost prohibitive, he's explored it. It was looking around $400,000 just to bring it up.
You could probably do a ground source for less than that.
Yeah.
Especially with state incentives that are available, so.
So, and we can. get
There's
into
no,
that.
there's no way to get them to pay for it.
I think we have a conversation, you know, obviously, but
Shoulder at least some of the cost of it,
it really
because they're
depends.
getting the contract for it, so they might as well.
Sometimes, you know, you can have a conversation with every source and they're willing to do it. It's within, it makes sense for them financially as well. But sometimes they're unwilling to do, it. Even cable.
Yeah. Okay, Article 7 is, oh, that's just reports, okay.
Do you anticipate any reports?
Fire station, I think, right? Fire stations,
Fire station.
I think the fire station is presenting. Jay would probably speak with them about.
Actually, 6.
Oh, I did? Did I? I'm so sorry. Article 6. Oh, yeah, the ride sharing, Article 6.
Sort of a typical. It's not done frequently in the town, but it's in order to appropriate money received from the TNC funds, because it's special revenue funds. The town has appropriated, there's about $1,800 in that revenue fund. So we're gonna obviously focus on road infrastructure improvements. That's what that special revenue is allowed.
It just goes into the pool
No pools.
for 18, what? Fun.
We already approved this last year, so or the year before, so do we have to actually just redo it every year?
We do it every year.
Okay, we have to redo it. Okay. Ride share. Okay. Article 7, reports, thank you. Article 8. It's a local option that's grant a clause 22 exemption to property owner and a trust to benefit the veteran. So veterans trust.
So I don't, I think the Assessor Gary should talk about a little bit, but it's essentially the town has adopted some exemptions for veterans on their taxes. This exemption in particular is 22G. It allows that exemption to be adopted if that property is held in a trust for that veteran. It's sort of, I don't know, it's a newer exemption that's emerged. I'd like for them to get into the technicals for you.
So what does it mean? It means that it lowers their taxes?
Yeah, yes, it's a regular exemption, like if you're a veteran, you have a certain amount exemption on your taxes. But if you had a trust, if your property was held in trust, you're not eligible for that exemption.
Oh, so it's not, okay, it's not new.
No.
Okay. Okay, you don't have to put it in a trust to get the exemption.
No.
Do you get an exemption?
I didn't think so.
I
but,
think you need to.
I gotta look at that. a little.
Somebody is a newly retired veteran in this room.
Yeah.
Needs to be- I'm afraid.
I don't understand how that stuff works, but that's a trust that ends with the death or the sale of the death of the veteran or the sale of the property, I'm assuming. I don't know how, I mean, if the, mostly because I don't understand real estate transactions.
Houses are held in real estate trusts can continue to be owned by that trust following the individual's death, because there may be other trustees or beneficiaries of the trust. So the trust itself and the real estate held by the trust can survive. It's actually not owned by the individual.
I understand that part. I just did, you're getting at my exact point. Thank you.
Disconnected from the lifespan of that individual, and it could persist. I think that where you're going is how long does that exemption
Right, exactly. Thank you.
actually apply? Because if the house is held in a trust and the veteran who put that house in a trust is no longer living, are we going to, in perpetuity, allow the tax deduction to be held by whomever might be a beneficiary of that trust? Because while they may or may not have been related to that veteran,
Right.
they may not be a veteran themselves.
Yeah, thank you, John.
I think it would probably go for as long as the people who were received the trust or beneficiaries of the trust are still current
I would
owners of.
love to get it clear.
That one, I really think the Board of Assessors should speak to you about.
Yeah.
I'm saying is exactly what you said.
I know it's short notice, but see if they can come in for a few
But
minutes.
Susan, the house is held by the trust. My house, I do not own my house. I have a real trust that owns my house. I personally do not own my house. I am a trustee of the trust, but that doesn't, I don't have to be a trustee of the trust. But legally, I don't own my house.
Why do you do that?
There's tax benefits
Oh.
to doing it.
And this is my point.
Somebody needs to teach me this stuff.
So my point being though is I don't know the history of this. I've never heard of this before. But I could potentially understand why the trusts were exempt from this, because the benefit is intended to serve the veteran.
Right.
And if your house is not owned by the veteran, it's owned by a trust. While that veteran might be living in that house and responsible for paying the taxes, they don't actually legally own the house, right?
Okay.
And the trustees can change or have different beneficiaries. This exemption may be a loophole, which may have unintended consequences to the town in terms of tax revenue that we may never be able to claw back.
If we do
Right,
it.
that, yeah, thank you. Wow, Jonathan, you took my tiny little nub of an idea and turned it into an actual question.
And if I'm going through the trouble of establishing a trust to get a tax benefit of owning the house and passing it to other trustees, I'm not sure. I should have to take into account the possibility of losing the tax benefit of what I'm eligible for when I go through that. I am, as a retired veteran.
I was about to go look into this tax exemption.
You have to have been wounded and disabled.
Yeah,
Statute.
Doesn't say that.
Veteran of the Philippine War,
Tom is a hell of a march.
Spanish American.
No, yeah, I think you should make someone choose what kind of tax benefits you are willing to go after and not give
Right.
everyone all of them.
It does say that the real estate is the domicile of a person that is owned by a trustee, so the person has to still be alive. It's not gonna, the benefit won't continue on with the trust. The domiciled individual has to be.
It says that in
22, in the Mass General laws.
I'd love to hear from someone who's an assessor, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
No, I'm not arguing with you at all.
I will say some of these can be a little tricky because I bought a farm and I found out that I get a tax, not an exemption by any means. It's just lower taxes because I have farmland. I don't get taxed on the full 10 acres. I only get taxed on the, what they consider the living acreage, which is like 2.5, which is a lot better, obviously. But there's a lot of rules you have to follow to do it. You have paperwork you have to fill out every year, certain animals you have to have, or receipts you have to show. I mean, it's, it's not as easy as just say it once and you get it. So I would assume there are some protections built into this, but we should definitely find out before we put a stamp of approval on it.
Thank you.
Okay. Article hold on, let me just make my notes. 8 is tax veterans. Okay, Article 8 is to see if the select board is going to accept any fee, easement, or ordinances in any such way to execute documents in connection. What? Article 9 was.
No, use Article 9.
Yep,
We just did 8.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're doing 9.
well, I
It's just
said 8, but I was reading 9.
This is
apologies.
just an acceptance.
Road acceptance.
Okay, okay, so it's we're accepting responsibility and all of the,
Rich will be here.
okay,
He'll be here to talk about these, but essentially 2 articles, one's for Fox Run, the other one's for the Noon Hills Acre subdivision. Like I said, Rich will come and present before.
there is a road in Noon Hill that we still haven't released yet. Has anybody built a Noon Hill? I mean,
It kind of looks like a new little spur.
where on earth could we possibly be building a Noon Hill that would be
It's
new?
off Moon Hill, it's off Day Street.
Oh.
And it's at if you're driving down Moon Hill, Day Street is a loop.
It's the loop,
It's at the
yeah.
bottom of the loop.
Oh, like an
there's-
offshoot?
If you go in like 2 houses at the bottom of the Day
Is
Street
it
loop.
relatively new, like they
I
did with
think,
Fredericks?
I thought it would have been long accepted, but it's been under construction for 5 or 6 years, so they must have.
But
just-
it's like an existing, they went through something like they did with
Must have
Fredericks.
had an easement or
Okay.
something and driven in 4 or 5 houses.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. It's way back down. Okay. I didn't know there was any new construction back there. That's why I was asking. Okay. 10 is,
The other street acceptance.
that's the other one. This is the Warren, Farrington, Hemingway. Where's the Lake Street thing? Have we just not gotten to it yet, or did they take it out?
We pulled it,
Hold it.
not ready for that. Blair wasn't ready to proceed with that. Annual town meeting, we'll probably address that one.
Okay.
Oh, goody.
What
Before town meeting several times, and I hope they gave you that history, or they will give you that history.
what was it that you were trying to do with Lake Street?
I'm not.
He doesn't
Yeah, I can't-
he doesn't have the history yet.
Lake Street has been
It's a different person. We've gone through some litigation, so forth.
someone,
I want some more information.
some,
I went to visit it, so I kind of understand
yeah. I
what
almost,
some of the issues were.
I almost bought I tried to buy the house that is the topic of the litigation, the big one, the 35 acres. When I was looking for my farmhouse, I tried to buy that and Rich McCarthy was like, so are you gonna be easier if you buy this? I was like, I don't know what you're trying to do, but sure. I ended up not getting it, but I tried. All right, why are these split, just out of curiosity, why are we splitting these into two different articles? We usually do all road acceptances in one, right? Don't we usually?
So I think they're not split.
The last couple of ones that I've seen, they were.
Been split? Yeah. Into separate
I
articles?
think is it that they're split based on whom we're accepting them from, because the second article 10 are grouped together, my understanding is. It's
Yeah, it's the same development.
I think it's the idea that Susan,
Maybe that's what
if
it
you
is.
lump them all together in this problem with one, you technically have to chuck the whole article,
Yeah.
so.
Okay,
It's grouped by development.
all right. This is Article 11 is the zoning map that we discussed last week. That's the one about the church and the fire station. Okay, Article 12. This is the C4, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions or want to discuss either of those things that we talked about last week with Justin specifically? We don't need to talk about them with each other again because we did that, but does anybody have any? No, okay. Article 13 is
Sorry, for Article 12. The change,
yeah,
I think if I'm not remembering it, but the zoning commission, do they actually articulate the benefit to the town for the zoning change aside from it as in the best interest of the developer?
just developing
That was kind
empty
of our
lot.
line of
empty
questioning,
land.
so.
It would be a benefit to the town in the sense of all commercial development or anytime something is taken from an empty lot to a development of some kind, there is a tax benefit for the town because now, because your taxes are different, your value is going to be different on an empty lot versus on a building. So we do make more money in the sense of whether we're charging someone whatever their tax rate is, because it's an assessed value of what the lot is. So we'll get more money if there's a structure on it. I think that's the only real concern for the town, why, or benefit for the town, right? Yes, everybody?
Yeah, limited.
But there would still be, and I know we discussed this last week, so just stop me if this is redundant, but. The town would get higher tax assessment of any type of development there.
Correct.
That's independent of making zoning changes, right? And I guess it depends on whether developer is saying, I will build nothing unless you.
That's what he is doing. I think
He's
that's what
saying
it's
he
doing.
can't build it because it's zoned for. It's essentially zoned for, it's supposed to be zoned like the building next to it, which is a commercial building only. And he's saying he can't sell that without putting mixed use residential on the second floor
And I didn't
and the third
raise,
floor or whatever.
I didn't raise this last week, but one thing that I would like for them to ask. Or ask the planning board, not that it matters, but. If we change it for the C4 for this building, I mean, in theory. That building that Ann's Market is in right now, it's businesses with like doctor's offices and suites above it, right? That's what's above it, but in
interesting.
theory, they could remodel that and make that an apartment complex
That's
above
good.
it.
That's a-
Because we will have changed the zoning laws. Now, is that cost prohibitive for a developer? Probably.
I've been up
because-
there. It's probably not.
Well, it depends, but I'm just saying, I would assume it would be cost prohibitive and that's what their answer would be. But it might be cost prohibitive today. It might not be cost prohibitive in
Yeah.
5 years. So we do have to keep in mind that that is a much larger land parcel than what we're talking about. So it would not just be
Yeah.
7 or 8 apartments, a townhouse, living residences. That could probably support 40, I would think.
Well, it
It's a
also
pretty big
covers,
building.
it covers the back end, there's another development behind.
Mhm.
The other one,
It's a process.
the other, there's no, I don't think there's any room to put
Well,
it.
You could
Turn the houses
turn the
into.
houses into.
Well, that's what I was saying. Obviously, no one's gonna bulldoze River's Edge right now, but in theory, at some point by changing this
Yeah.
rule, you could feasibly have someone come in, buy them all up, bulldoze all of River's Edge and build a 400 person 400 unit apartment complex because the space is there. So you just have to remember that when you change the zoning, yes, I understand that's the only available lot.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand no one will likely do that. You're not talking about the likely scenario, but in 20 years, that is going to look completely different and the rest of this town is going to look completely different. I mean, I've lived here 13 and it looks different than it did when I moved here. So, I mean, there's at least 6 new developments since I've lived here in 13 years. Fox Run went in since I've been here. The one on Seekonk is going in, the one on Main Street, the one on Rockwood Road. And there's one more. I don't remember, but there's more than one. And then I've been here 13. So in 20 years, it's going to look different.
One other question I have, just to continue the slippery slope nonsense. I understand there's different zones. This is the C4 district. And I understand that our zoning that we're discussing here in the zoning change is only for C4. However, are we opening ourselves up to problems when some developer in some other zone says, like, can they make a legal claim against the town around the arbitrary and capricious type of thing of why do you allow mixed use development for this one developer in this one zone and disallow it for me with my property in this other zone?
Well, we actually allow it in other zones in town too. Like you can do that downtown.
I'm not necessarily referring to downtown, but
But
some other zone where
it's
it
the
may not
same,
work.
we've already opened the slippery slope, I guess, is what, by allowing it here, we've theoretically allowed it in other areas where there's commercial development, so. Because there didn't used to be mixed use in the downtown, so.
But all zoning's like that. You're making arbitrary and capricious decisions that this is only going to be houses and this is going to be only commercial and this will be a mix of housing and commercial.
Right.
So I mean, that's you.
I'm just saying, we don't foresee an issue of when we grant this change for C4 because it's only in the C4 and only for this one developer and et cetera, that we may not be inundated with similar types of requests.
And technically, the C4 encompasses more
This
than
is
one.
the road acceptance.
process. All those private houses on, is it Baltimore? Those are in C4. The ones on the south side of the street, they're in the C4 district. So there's, a dozen lots in C4. It's not just that one lot. They're not big enough to do a planned multi-lot development, which is what this really impacts. But,
There's Lawrence up here.
Until someone buys all of them.
until.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, obviously today it doesn't affect anything else, but that is what developers do. They buy all of the lots. And so, okay.
Thank you.
I think, we're obviously gonna still want to talk to Rich in a little bit more detail when he's here in October. We already did Article 14. All right, Article 15. Which is request funding for an energy study for town hall for replacing the heating and cooling systems, which I agree.
I read this.
If we're going to be doing this, if this does pass, then we really need to consider doing this prior to replacing the boiler as far as a capital item in there. They should probably go into conjunction. How much money are we talking about? How much is this?
So they gave a range, that I think she should have someone come in for this, but it's $50,000 to $100,000. Yeah.
Why didn't you say that on camera? Okay. That is a lot more than. No, I
I
didn't.
actually don't think it's that significant. It's an engineering study and evaluate, so they're handing you,
I know.
they're handing you not plans, but they're handing you. They're knocking down a lot of the assumptions in the final study.
Mhm.
You can't do this or you can do this. If they look at the ground source heat pump, for instance, they're gonna have to look at what's in the ground, whether they can find a place to put a well. If they're, you're gonna get how many heat pumps you need per room or per area. So it's a lot of money, but it's not, it's helping you write your RFP for the project.
Mhm. Yes.
Question.
Mhm.
Justin, do you know what the heating costs per year are on the town hall? How much we spend on heating well?
We can get that information for you though.
Yeah, I think that's pertinent. I think it's gonna be more than you think.
And not to age myself, Susan, but when I was the energy manager, Bob Bullock, this precedes, Matt. Bob was our facilities manager and he was talking about doing it 10 years ago. So it needs to be done at some point. This gets us the best possible option.
You won't have someone do for free an assessment of, do you actually have the hydrology on site to be able to do this? You know, Dave and I could go online and sketch out how many heads you might need in a building this size, and we could give you that for free. It would be worth exactly what you paid for it. You know, if you're spending $100,000, you're gonna get engineered plans, which will make sure that you could actually put the thing in, that it will actually work, that it will actually heat. And
We're talking about natural gas. It'll talk about the costs of running it through town property into the building. Obviously the negotiation with
So you have to have
Eversource or
engineered
National
drawings.
Grid, whoever actually provides the gas in town.
You have to have engineered drawings for when you, in this town, you have to have an engineer do a plan and drawings just to put in a regular HVAC system.
This won't get you the final engineered plans. It'll get you the baseline for going out and seeking a firm who can give you exactly what you need. So
So you're.
I'm not saying it's worth $100,000.
I'm saying, right, but that's what I'm saying. So when you're building or when you're doing this or in construction, however you want to word it, you hire the HVAC company, the HVAC company provides the engineered drawings. Is the cost built into what they're billing you? Absolutely. Of course it is. They're not doing anything for free. Right? I just did this and instead of costing me 40,000, which is what an HVAC system should have cost me, it cost me 56,000 because it was included the engineered drawings. I just want to make sure we're not paying for it. What I'm getting at is the reason I'm saying this is because it's going to be the same thing. I want to make sure we're not paying for it twice. I want to make sure. we're not paying-
Evaluation of options in addition to what's it saying. So
Yeah.
whether we should pursue gas, whether we should stick with oil,
Yeah.
or whether we should pursue one of the.
And I get that.
No.
There's certainly, this
You
is
only wonder
basically,
what your AC.
no, this is basically a feasibility study
Right.
and those cost money. I absolutely, I want to make sure that once we then decide what we're going to do and we're hiring someone, we're not turning around and paying for this same similar type of engineered plan.
Well, I think
Again.
I think this would give us the option to say, we're going out for gas, or we're going out for oil, or we're going out for ground source heat pumps, so you wouldn't have the evaluation of the multiple options.
Mhm.
We would make the choice, we, the town would make, not us, but the town would make the choice that ground source heat pumps makes the most sense, or natural gas makes the most sense because of what we learned from the study.
Just further context, because I haven't had a chance to meet with the energy committee, so. One, I'd want them to flesh it out, but one thing that might be a benefit if we know we're replacing the town hall boiler is that, you know, green communities grants and so forth, in order to get these grant funding that it's available, we need to have this sort of study to be eligible for those grants.
Oh, yeah, that's the other one we spent $15,000 on a couple of years.
We got
was the
more.
green
benefit
study.
from-
Yeah.
We should have the energy committee before us, Susan,
Yeah.
because we've gotten that money back in triplicate,
You want to see if the energy commission can
not between now and town meeting in the fall, but.
No, I don't mean for that. No, for this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to have.
If they can, it's not gonna hold anything up, but if they can come.
We got
Did I already ask you that?
a couple $100,000
Did
from
I
the
already
state.
ask you? I thought I did. I was like, wait a minute, who else are we asking for? Okay. We'll see if they can join us in one of the next couple of meetings. All right. Well, that's it. Pretty slim.
There's also a ton of federal money out there. Right?
You know,
I just,
you just have to remember that.
Separate thing last week.
When I complain about these things, it's because these are the things that they're gonna get complained about at town meeting. You know that somebody's going to say, I don't want to spend $100,000 on this when we're spending $700 million on the fire station. So, yeah.
You have a special place in your heart for sticking with energy.
Not specifically energy, but I just have a special place for, I have to be I always say this, I say this every time. For me to say yes to something, I need to understand it. I need to see the cost benefit for us. And I need to be able to explain it to your average taxpayer on why they should want to put $100,000 towards this instead of $100,000 towards a school or to the DPW or to the fire station or towards the engine. What is it? What is the benefit that they're getting instead of putting that same 100,000 towards something else. Because that's always the argument. Well, it's in the budget already, right? Or it's already going to be spent on something. It's already what we already collected the taxes. Well, yes, but it could go to something else. So as long as they understand it and can get on board with it, then I do support it. It's not,
So-
I'm not specifically targeting energy. It's just they tend to ask for
I
it.
think we should let the energy committee know if they come before, if and when they come before us, that we want to understand what we bought with previous money.
Mhm.
And how how that plays into this. Rather than just saying, I don't want this project presented by itself.
Yeah.
I want it presented as part of their plan. If
You
that
wanna
makes
give them
any
a heads
sense.
up on what we'd like to know, that's one of them, and then I'd like to know what the cost benefit,
Andy's
it will
watching.
be. the cost benefit and the savings
probably
to the town,
one
if
and
there
done,
are
yeah.
any. To approve this.
Not saying we won't. I'm just saying I want to know that. Because, you know. We all know who's going to get up at town meeting and complain about spending $100,000 on this,
Having too much fun to call the meeting to an end.
but you gotta
so-
go.
No, I want to extend it. We had, so there was a discussion earlier about the Federal Reinvestment Act, whatever, I forget. And-
But
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And there was not like a plan of what we're gonna do with that. So as we're talking about this study about our investment, maybe pulling that into the capital items to say how all of that comes together.
yeah, this is a good discussion, actually. So I've been melding the capital meetings with ARPA because they're one and the same.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because there are some projects that are out there that are quite expensive, may be tough to fit within our free cash allotment. So we're having a conversation at the same time. The previous town administrator gave sort of a framework to the board, but the board wanted to wait until I got on board. And one thing that I've done is I met with everyone, because not everyone was consulted when she did the framework. So whatever plan we come up with capital will sort of be in conjunction with the ARPA plan as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
We have how many more years to spend the ARPA money? 3?
So you have to commit it by 2024 and then expend it by 2026.
Okay.
And how much is out there?
So we have about $3.something million. There's difference here a little bit though.
Can't be on recurring costs. Right? It has to be on one, we consider one-time expenditures.
Well,
Well, that's the way it was explained
You
to us the
can't-
first time.
as a finance person,
Mhm.
I would say you don't want to be spending on recurring costs. Because eventually it's going to hit your budget and the money's going to run out, right? And how do you allocate? Just FYI for the town did that. They spent $300,000 in MS4 using ARPA funds in a budgeted amount. It's going to be part of the budget moving forward. There's something to keep in mind. That's a recurring expense that we used ARPA funds on in this past budget. But in terms of you asked, does it have to be one-time funds? It doesn't have to be, but there's 2 allotment funds. We get one directly to the town from the federal government. That's under revenue loss. You can essentially use it for whatever you want to utilize it for. But we also get county funds as well, but that's pretty restrictive. You can only use it in 4 buckets. You can only use it for COVID, direct COVID related expenses, premium pay, broadband, infrastructure investment, and water and sewer. And that is the largest amount of funds that we have. We have about 2 million in that, and we have 1.2 in the sort of revenue loss directly to the town.
Oh, you can use it for water recovery? We should use it to recover all the money that we're not getting for the wastewater treatment plant. Has that been settled yet either? Wastewater treatment stuff? Nope. Okay, didn't get those funds either yet, huh? Okay,
There is the sewer improvement stuff we have to do to get within state guidelines.
Right.
I think
And
That's
that-
stormwater.
that's the stormwater.
The stormwater is not eligible, I think.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, you can, all right.
Actually, that's what the town sort of wanted to focus on, particularly on the county funds.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Be great. Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Very good.
anybody else have any questions?
All meeting down.
Go ahead.
Just a point of concern, Article 8, I think clause 22G is supposed to be mass general law. Can we make sure that before we go to print, we fix the typo?
So I spoke with Susan actually about this. This was a late arrival. Town council has not reviewed this
Okay.
entirely. So we'll definitely make sure it's correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay,
this is definitely a rough draft. As you can note, my my numbers in the town administrative comments, I think in Article 11, 12, and 13.
Mhm.
So.
I will add to my statement on Article 8 before. I didn't notice the last 4 words in this. There's the exemption of when the title is held in trust for the person's benefit. That should be interpreted if that person is no longer alive.
Okay, thank you.
Benefiting from living in a house,
Thank you.
but we should make sure that it's clear that when that situation arises, that the tax benefit is reversed.
Just an FYI for the advisory committee, I flagged that article because this is a local option that not a lot of communities have adopted actually either. So the Board of Assessors sent it up to us, a late arrival. I wanted to include it so you guys can see it, but that language has to be adjusted, in my opinion. I've looked at a couple of other communities, how they've adopted, it's all different, all changed.
I'm sorry, opening this whole thing back up again. Do we have any idea of, number one, how many veterans in town have already claimed an exemption? And then number two, how many veterans might be in town that haven't but would because their house is held in trust? I can't imagine it's more than it.
And it's disabled veterans. It's not just veterans.
Does it say disabled?
Well,
The
section
exemptions are
22 is
Right, I mean-
entirely about that.
I'm not saying that there's not value here, but I'm just saying.
You don't.
No,
The tax implications to the town might be a rounding error in terms of how many individual.
It would be, in other words, it would be easy to do.
Right, how many people meet this criteria and whose house is currently held by a real estate trust might be 0. In all practical purposes.
Which means we're having this conversation for no
I
reason.
would say it's non-zero if it came up.
Yeah, somebody asked them.
Right.
That would be interesting to know why.
These are communities adopted, for example, Kingston adopted it about 2 years ago. So it's starting to proliferate in this.
So the assessors went to the assessor.
Trickle
conference
down,
and said,
yes,
This is something
yeah.
you need to play with.
What are you putting on your warrant this year?
Do we know what is the actual benefit? I mean, obviously, everyone's tax. Property tax is different, but in terms of percentage. Can I ask, like, is it a?
Well, it's 16.9%. Of whatever your assessed value is, correct? Is it 16.9 this year?
We have to read the statute and see what the exemption actually is. I don't say it's 100%.
No. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying
I think
everyone pays a different tax, obviously, because their assessed value is different, but everyone pays in Norfolk pays 60, whatever it is, 16.9%, except for when you have an exemption that usually that just affects your assessed value, though. I don't know if it actually affects your percentage.
Actually, so one, I really want the Board of Assessors to come talk about, so
Yeah.
you know it, but there, different exemptions have different rates, actually. You could have an
Okay.
exemption for $12.50, you could have one for $7.50. It really depends what the exemption is,
Okay,
what it qualifies.
so it's a percentage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, like, how can we translate this
Dollar figure.
into a dollar?
Could be a dollar.
It's an actual, it'll be a dollar amount deduction of whatever.
The
you're-
statute mentions a dollar amount, which if and I'm reading on a cell.
Would be
phone,
the
so
same
you
no matter
know,
the
it
value
looks like
of
it's
your house.
It's a smaller amount.
like $250. It looked like something, but I could have read the statute wrong.
It's a smaller amount generally from what I've seen. And it is a dollar amount. It's not a percentage for these particular.
Okay, so it's not a percentage. Good. All right, so that was the warrant. Do we have minutes to approve, Brian?
We do. I sent them out earlier. No changes from what Erica sent to me. It looked like a great summary of our last meeting. I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. We're all in person, so we can just say yay or nay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously. Okay, and because we are all in person, I don't have to take a roll call vote to the meeting, right?
Should do adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Sorry. Who's on the schedule for next week? Do we have anyone scheduled for next week? Or was next week the week we had nobody?
Was, we were gonna vote on things,
That's right.
but it seems like that's not.
Yeah, we need the numbers. Well, we need the numbers from Justin before we can really vote. Because the only other thing that we're set on technically would be this conservation. I mean, we can vote on that one. But we're still waiting for planning where we can't vote until we know what they're exactly putting on the warrant. They haven't voted yet Justin and Todd are not quite done with capital items, so we can't vote on those. We haven't heard from Energy and,
Zoning hasn't met yet either.
right, they're not meeting until, yeah, planning, they're not meeting until October 11th. So we've got a ways to go. I would like to have the October 12th meeting. I would like for us, if at all possible, to have us voted on everything else and we just vote on the planning board stuff that night. Because otherwise, that only gives everybody a couple, if we wait to do another meeting, then that gives only a couple of days to write up the warrant articles, and I always hate rushing. I mean,
Energy board of Directors and.
next week, next,
Justin and Todd at some point, I don't know if you guys-
you probably want to come back either next week on the 5th or on the 12th.
Yeah, probably the 5th or the 12th.
Okay, so that'll make for about an hour-long meeting. I can't imagine the Board of Assessors, it's one article, and Energy, it's one article. Those shouldn't take too long, and then Justin and Todd can do capital items. So just make sure that once you get confirmation from them that they can come next week, then just make sure that they're updated. And now that the planning board pulled everything, I mean, unless we have a lot of back and forth to do with Rich on those, that meeting should not take long, which means we can vote that.
Sounds like a month.
I mean, it may not, but at least I'm just trying to figure out the voting schedule. I'm not trying to sway anyone on long or short meetings or opinions on anything. I just want to make sure that we get voted in time to print the warrant without having to rush. A lot of times we finish on Wednesday and your articles are due on, your write-ups are due on Friday. It's great if you have time, but I have my kids Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So if I have my kids, that's a pain. So I'd like to have the weekend to write them up.
Number of these things, the write-ups are by rote.
Right.
The numbers are the numbers, and we have to vote on the numbers, but the capital stuff,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
wrote
the
them 3
fall one
years-
is a lot
I
easier.
wrote them 3 years in a row and I use the same language, and it's the numbers that show up on the screen that make,
The fall one is a lot easier. The spring one, when
yeah.
I have to, I have to do a chair letter and we have to go over the budget in detail and give an overview of that. It takes a little bit
So we're
longer.
gonna
to do
vote on
those.
all of them on the 5th, which is next week, except for the ones on the 12th that we're here.
If we can, if Justin and Todd are ready, and if the Board of Assessors and the Energy Commission can come and we're satisfied with the questions, I say we stay for 20 minutes afterwards and go ahead and get those voted on. Well, there's only 15. We can do that. We can do that. We can.
Motion to adjourn.
We already did that.
Well, we didn't vote on it, did we?
Well, I
And
didn't.
we just had a discussion.
We had a discussion afterwards. So all in favor officially.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.